Hello everyone and welcome to this audio podcast. This audio podcast is part of LabCoat. As part of this audio podcast is part of a Storm expose. This audio podcast is part of a Lab N Ostix and Indicate. This audio podcast is part of the Click, and this audio podcast is part of a ZtormLabostix production. Through this audio podcast, I look at works by I look sorry I look at a summary in around a publication by Mohammed and team from 2016. Publication being Can Social Media Reduce Discrimination and Ignorance towards patients with long-term condition and a CKD, and where the publication has a CKD example from a CKD example. Uh, and so in around the summary, between finalizing or between different sort of works in amongst the literature and in amongst sort of the in amongst evidences, there have been a basis in around, for example, additionally, sort of a look at the original sort of Department of Health National Framework for Renal Services or Kidney Services in around 2004, and sort of the National Framework for Kidney Services or Renal Services in around 2005, and where the Department of Health in the United Kingdom, the DOH, had originally published two sort of guidelines, sort of part one and part two, being in 2004 and 2005, and also where there have been sort of some communication or some works, early sort of comms or communications and developing evidence from collaborators such as the kidney disease and renal support or KDARS group for kids, and in amongst where the RPSG and look to further understand sort of coping, but also more importantly, disparities, inequalities, and if and where discrimination and ignorance also sort of exist or can exist for those who suffer with those who suffer in CKD or chronic kidney disease, and especially surrounding where recipients may have, for example, apart from sort of kidney or nephrology regarding conditions or illness, but also additionally, or where for example, where that can apart from sort of long-term sort of conditions or illnesses or sort of ailments, the publication also looked to include a sort of a basis in around those with those sort of factoring literature and sort of evidence in around those who suffer with those who suffer with disabilities, and including learning disabilities. And so this works sort of explores how social media, the publication sort of looks to investigate or explore how social media as an example of assistive technology in an increasingly digital age could help reduce discrimination and ignorance against discrimination and ignorance, where this can exist for those with disabilities and long-term or long-standing conditions. And so the work, the publication focuses on in around a sort of an interlink between two international social media platforms, and sort of additionally providing specific examples from a United Kingdom or UK perspective. That draws this audio podcast to a close. This audio podcast is part of the Lab Coat. This audio podcast is part of a Storm expose. This audio podcast is part of a Lab N Ostix and Indicate. This audio podcast is part of the Click. This audio podcast is part of a ZtormLabostix production.